Comic books have long gotten woke and then gone broke. We know that readership is way down and has been for some time. And many people have suggested it's because the comic books got woke and went broke. People don't want to read this stuff. I'm not entirely convinced, though. Maybe. We'll see how things play out with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Reports are that the MCU is getting woke and that many more superhero movies are going to be woke and written by very prominent critical race theorists. But these movies, the ones that haven't incorporated some wokeness into them, still have done well. I mean, Captain Marvel was ragged on by everybody. I criticized it. And they still made a ton of money. So I don't know if it's about getting woke and going broke. Sometimes companies get broke and then go woke in a desperate attempt to pander to someone, to anybody who would buy their stuff. But it's a get woke, go broke kind of week because I really do think that the movie industry and the comics industry is going to be in for some bad news and bad numbers because what they're making is trash. I'm sorry, it's just true. Jordan Peterson tweeted the other day, what the hell? This was in response to an image from a comic book from Captain America that was sent to him. In it, we can see the Red Skull. For those who are not familiar with Captain America, the Red Skull is the Nazi villain, and they're apparently now modeling the new Red Skull off of Jordan Peterson and trying to make Peterson's ideas seem like he's a villain. Hey, man, they're going for kids. But I'll tell you this. Who reads comic books? I know a lot of people probably do, but the numbers are going down. And I have to imagine that kids aren't reading comic books in brick and mortar shops anymore. So maybe they're getting them online, I suppose. But I think it's just an old medium. I think they were going broke. So they got woke in a desperate attempt to try and fluff their numbers and be like, hey, look, we agree with your ideology. Buy our stuff. In this image, it says on the right hand side, Chaos and Order, Carl Luger's Genius, and the Feminist Trap. Then you see, I guess it's like a video of the Red Skull, and it says 10 rules for life. Incredible. Jordan Peterson was apparently shocked to discover that he lives in a universe where Ta-Nehisi Coates has written a Captain America comic featuring a parody of his ideas as part of the philosophy of the arch-villain, the Red Skull. That's right. Jordan Peterson is the Nazi villain in Captain America now, apparently. Now, I have a question about this. I'll read you the gist of the story. We'll go through what's going on with this comic book industry and how it's suffering. And they're all this weird stuff's happening with critical theory. Let me ask you, why are they trying to soften Nazism? This is the weird thing to me. And we've long seen this and we've long talked about it. The Red Skull was an authoritarian, ethno-nationalist, literal Nazi in the comics. He was the villain. Captain America punches him in the face. He punches Nazis. Jordan Peterson is a classical liberal who believes in individual liberties and opposes authoritarianism. Why are they trying to make it seem like the Red Skull is not that bad of a guy? Isn't that really creepy? Why are these woke leftists producing content where they're trying to actually liken rational individualist ideas that are good with Nazis? Why is Ta-Nehisi Coates trying to make the Red Skull palatable? Listen, when you see these things from the Red Skull, I guess the assumption is you must automatically assume the villain is bad and everything they do is bad. When you see some villains like Mr. Freeze, is it Mr. Freeze? In Batman, the animated series origin for Mr. Freeze was incredible. My understanding is that OG Mr. Freeze was just your run-of-the-mill garbage villain who was like, I'll freeze you with an ice ray. And then the animated series for Batman came out and they made his story incredible. I think it was like the first animated show to win an Emmy or something like that. The story for Mr. Freeze was that, or is it Dr. Freeze? I don't know, Mr. Freeze, whatever. He was trying to save his wife who was terminally ill and she was cryogenically frozen. But he was essentially siphoning away grant money from the company he worked for. When they found out, they pulled the plug. And in a panic to save his wife, he attacks the company owner, chemicals get spilled on him, and he becomes Mr. Freeze. His whole motivation is he will stop at nothing to save the life of his wife who is terminally ill. It's an incredible villain. I mean, it's somebody who you're almost sympathetic for, but you know it's wrong. The Red Skull is literally a Nazi scientist. You don't root for these people. There's not supposed to be redeeming qualities to this. Taking a self-help guru doctor, psychologist like Dr. Peterson, and then trying to make it seem like that's what the Red Skull is into, softens Nazism. For who? For why? I've always been saying these people, They share the same ideology. Look at the Farrakhan supporter who ran the barricade in D.C. They believe almost the exact same things. The difference? The color of their skin. It's no surprise to me then. They actually want to soften what this villain really is. Here's a story from Know Your Meme. Jordan Peterson thinks the new Red Skull is based on him. Okay, that's a pretty crummy headline. It's not that he thinks the new Red Skull is based on him. It literally says chaos and order and 10 rules for life. As you know, Jordan Peterson has a very similar book and talks about very similar things. They write, controversial philosopher Jordan Peterson, is he a philosopher? I thought he was a psychologist. Is currently processing the idea that the Red Skull, a villain in the Captain America universe, may be based on him in a recent Captain America issue written by author and Atlantic contributor Ta-Nehisi Coates. He may very well be right in the issue. Captain America talks about a young boy disappearing into the internet and coming out with a new theory of the world fed to him by the Red Skull. The next panel shows a still of what the Red Skull's internet content looks like. It shows him offering 10 rules for life. Peterson's book is called The 12 Rules for Life, with sections Chaos and Order, Carl Luger's Genius, and The Feminist Trap. Skull tells them that they've always longed to hear, says Captain America, that they are secretly great, that the whole world's against them, that if they're truly men, they'll fight back and bingo. That's their purpose. That's what they live for. That's what they'll die for. Although I'm not entirely sure that's what Jordan Peterson is telling people to do. He's telling young men to be responsible and clean your room. I don't see that as anywhere near Nazi ideology. Sorry. In the panel, this is also where it gets really funny. The seriousness of the internet to these people is laughable. I don't take the internet all that seriously for the most part. I understand it. It's where we're entering this internet world and internet economy. Captain America says, so let me guess. Your brother, he disappeared into the internet. And when he comes back out, he can't stop talking about his new theory of the world. And that theory comes from one man, the Red Skull. And then you can see it, 10 rules for life. And the guy goes, yeah, he did. It's the same for all of them. Young men, weak, looking for purpose. I found the flag. You found the badge. They found the skull. He tells them what they've always longed to hear, that they are secretly great, that the whole world is against them, that if they're truly men, they'll fight back. And bingo, that's their purpose. That's what they live for, and that's what they'll die for. It's really funny. Replace the skull with Ta-Nehisi Coates. That these young men and women, they go online and they find this content, looking for purpose. I found the flag, you found the badge, they found Coates. They tell them what they've always wanted to hear, that they are secretly great, that the whole world is against them. And if they're truly men and women, they'll fight back. You know, it's funny. I think about critical theory and what they tell young people, that you could be a doctor, but the whole world's against you. That doesn't sound like something Jordan Peterson says. Jordan Peterson says, life is not fair, life is tough, work hard, and you can succeed. And it's the critical theorists who say, the whole world hates you. It's a giant sphere of white supremacy. I had one of these lunatic white supremacists, this critical theorist lefty guys, tell me that China's culture, which literally invented the compass 1,000 years before Europe, was built by colonialists and white Europeans. And I'm like, bro, I understand Hong Kong, Macau, etc. I get all that stuff. But you mean to tell me that the 1,000-year plus history of China and East Asia was made by white Europeans before they'd even knew each other existed? It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And that's why I often say these leftists are white supremacists. That's why I was so heavy on they're trying to soften what the Red Skull represents. There's a viral post a while ago talking about why the left was so adamant about changing the definition of words and changing the definition of racist. It's because they are literally white supremacists and racists. Not all of them. Some of them are black supremacists or black nationalists. But that's why they try to change the definition of words. Otherwise, people would start to realize, hey, wait a minute, that thing that you're talking about, that's you. And that's true. So now what's happening is, whereas the Nazis are actual historical villains with crazy ideologies and we defeated them, the comic is changing it. So the Red Skull represents classical liberalism, like Jordan Peterson, but they paint it in a very villainous way. I'm not entirely convinced young people are reading these comics anymore, and I'm not sure anybody wants to read this trash, so I don't know if it'll have that big of an impact. But what's happening now is Captain America represents the fascistic ideology. There is no truth but power was a core tenet of Nazism, at least according to the late David Graeber. He tweeted about this, and it was an interesting thread. He said he was the famous anthropologist who was also known for being an anarchist, one of the originators of Occupy Wall Street. And he said there's a sect of the left that believes there is no truth but power and is adopting fascistic tendencies and strategies. And they are. So when you have these writers flip the script, Captain America was supposed to represent classical liberalism, freedom and individuality, stopping the authoritarianism. Now he represents the cult ideology. And the skull is now representing someone online telling you to think for yourself and be responsible. Well, we know the Red Skull is literally a Nazi, and Jordan Peterson isn't. Mixing these things together is an attempt, I suppose, to taint what Jordan Peterson represents. In the outcome, however, is that if on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being good and 10 being pure evil, and Jordan Peterson is literally just a good guy, a 1, let's say everyone's got their faults and he's a 2, and the Red Skull is a villain who represents a 10, mixing them together lightens what the Red Skull is. And it's because, in my opinion, these leftists are akin to, they're very similar in many ways to the fascists in their belief structure. They say after the panel was brought to Peterson's attention by a fan, he posted several tweets bewildered at the implied analogy between himself and the Red Skull. Others, less sympathetic to Peterson, found the comparison and Peterson's confusion more humorous. Parker Malloy says, LOL, Jordan Peterson is upset that Red Skull seems to have been modeled after him in a Captain America comic. That's because Parker, I guess, if they like that modeling, defends Nazis. It's pretty funny that Jordan Peterson is complaining the Nazi supervillain Red Skull sounds like him. Yes, it's not like someone wrote this randomly. They're doing it on purpose. Jordan Peterson is an internationally renowned best-selling author and psychologist. You might not like him, but he is mainstream. He appears on mainstream TV shows. He does guest segments on mainstream talk shows, guest panels. Some of them aren't even overly political. He has millions of fans and followers, and he sells books. He's got a new one coming out. It's a mainstream position. They're now trying to take something that most people probably agree with, and many people overtly do, and make it seem like that's the bad guy. So let me ask you this. If a world-renowned self-help psychologist with a book, 12 Rules for Life, tells you to be responsible and get your life together, is the villain, what do they represent? Gluttony, sloth, pride, envy, wrath? You get the point. They represent anger and pestilence. One person said, Jordan Peterson apparently thinks the Red Skull is being used as a parody of him. You know, maybe if your whole persona can seamlessly be applied to the Red Skull, you might be the problem. The only problem is it can't. Jordan Peterson's persona can't be applied to the Red Skull. That's why it's stupid and makes no sense. Could you imagine if the Nazis were going around saying, like, defend individual liberties and civil rights and respect all people around the world? Yeah, sorry, that's not what they did. Quite the opposite, mind you. So what are these people doing? Quite the opposite of what they claim. Well, my friends, rest assured it will only get worse. From The Guardian, Marvel's next wave of heroes will tear up tradition in the name of progress. Boundaries are being raised, with Natalie Portman cast as Thor and Ta-Nehisi Coates set to write a black Superman film. You know, I'll tell you why I take issue with Natalie Portman as Thor. I like Natalie Portman. I like her in the Thor movies. I think she is good at what she does. She's awesome, actually. She was in Star Wars. That was fun. And I'd love to see her gain superpowers and be a superhero. She could be in the MCU. That'd be rad. The issue I take is that Thor is literally the dude. Like, it's a guy in the movie. So I guess they'll come up with some way of, like, claiming Thor is just his title, but Thor's literally Thor's name. Like, you're Thor now. Does, like, Thor get turned into a woman or something? And all of a sudden it's because it's Thor's identity. Does he switch bodies with Natalie Portman? And you're like, no, I'm Thor. Blah. Or is it Natalie Portman getting the hammer and then being worthy to wield it? Which would also, in my opinion, kind of be stupid, because we waited a decade for the great reveal in Endgame when you see the hammer lift off the ground and it flies and then boom, Captain America catches it. And you're like, oh, and everyone in the audience is cheering. The theaters, they're going like, yes, we knew it. And then you hear Thor go, I knew it. Because Captain America was worthy. Captain America was worthy to move that hammer. In Age of Ultron, they're all trying to lift the hammer, and Steve moves it a little bit, and then Thor gets nervous. But Steve Rogers proves himself to be worthy to wield Mjolnir. In fact, in Endgame, Captain America actually catches, Stormbreaker, the axe, and then he throws it to Thor and catches Mjolnir, proving that he also had the strength to wield a weapon that was supposed to make his brain explode. At least that's what Thor said in Infinity War. That was the payoff. The problem with what's going on now with wokeness is that they always make it that the woke character must be the most powerful for no reason. There's a thing in gaming, in card games particularly, just in a lot of games, called power creep. For those that aren't familiar with, say, Magic the Gathering, it's a card game where you have cards that have a certain cost. You need resources to use them to win the game. Over time, to make the game more interesting, they increase the power level of cards so they do more for less resources. Eventually, the game moves too fast. It's crazy. Someone gets a card and you're like, that's nuts. It's too powerful. I lost. It's ridiculous. This is called power creep. And eventually, they have to wind it all back and weaken everything. And it typically is a boring period for a lot of people because they're like, oh. This is what's happening now in these movies. We had Captain America. Scrawny little nobody. But he was willing to jump on a grenade. One of the most powerful moments in the MCU. Steve Rogers in the movie. Why people look up to him? He was a little guy. He was weak and scrawny with tons of ailments. But he stood up to that dude in the alley holding the garbage can lid saying, I can do this all day. He's getting beat. And Bucky Barnes comes in and saves him. This is in the Captain America movie. Steve then proves himself to be of great moral character. So he's given the super soldier serum. There's a point in the movie where I think it's Jack. No. Who is it? It's not Jack Nicholson. It's Tommy Lee. He's like, we want good soldiers, not these scrawny weaklings. And then he pulls the grenade. It's a dummy and throws it. And then they yell grenade. And Steve Rogers, scrawny and weak, jumps on it and yells, get back. Jumps on it to save everybody else. It's a powerful moment from a great character who was willing to risk everything and sacrifice it all to save everyone else. And then, after a decade, we finally come to the point in Endgame where fighting to save the universe from Thanos, he can wield Mjolnir because he was worthy. It was an incredible story arc from this small kid in Brooklyn who was too weak to one of the most powerful individuals in the universe being able to wield Mjolnir. That's, well, a very high level individual wielding that powerful weapon. What we see now with all the wokeness is that Natalie Portman has no great story arc, sacrifices nothing, and then just gets Mjolnir and she's like, I'm Thor now. Captain Marvel. The reason why people didn't like this is that she was literally a villain. She starts off as a villain, and a lot of people pointed this out. She's supposed to. She's supposed to realize that she's been brainwashed. But when it comes to wokeness in movies, they don't give you, there's nothing earned. I think this is why they don't like Jordan Peterson. And this is where all starts to come together. With Jordan Peterson, he tells you to find the heaviest thing you can carry and carry it. That's not easy. You first must find it, and then you must carry it, and it's heavy. That's life. That's responsibility. And it's good advice. It makes you stronger. Learning to work hard to earn your keep makes you stronger. On the left, however, many individuals don't believe in hard work. Oh, they'll claim they do, but they don't. We saw it with Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal, where she said people unwilling to work would be given money. Their idea is that you should just receive. Then we see it with Captain Marvel. She wasn't chosen for anything. That she had some guy making fun of her. She is doing a test flight. Ship crashes, and an energy blast gives her ridiculous superpowers. She becomes the most powerful entity, more powerful than Thanos. In Endgame, he bonks her, he headbutts her, and she's unfazed. And then she grabs him, and he's going, "Ugh! Are you kidding me, dude? She's some random Earth woman gets hit by an explosion, and she's stronger than Thanos? We were waiting 10 years for the villain that was Thanos because he was so powerful. We all had to come together to defeat him, and this lady is just stronger than he is? This is wokeness. There's nothing earned. It's just yours. You deserve it. So you look at these, it's no surprise that you see in Captain America, the ideas of working hard to earn your keep are considered villainous and even Nazi-like. And that, for some reason, I guess, Natalie Portman will be Thor. I'm willing to bet, I'll tell you this, I'm willing to bet what's going to happen is that in the movie, there will be no great arc. There will be no earned anything. There will be no unlocked potential. She'll literally just be given the hammer and go, wow, I can use it now. Or Thor will whisper to it, You are now being given to the new Thor. And then she's just worthy. She didn't fight. She didn't sacrifice. She didn't die. Sorry. Maybe they'll try and make something. Maybe it'll be all right. I don't know. I'll probably go see it anyway. Well, I can say this. The woke stuff in media doesn't fly. Have you noticed that since Endgame, there's not been a whole lot of talk about Captain Marvel? Well, she was supposed to take over. I'm a big fan of the MCU. I love it. And they were saying before Captain Marvel that she was going to replace Tony Stark as the centerpiece of the MCU in the next phase. Tony Stark was a major centerpiece for the MCU, appearing in many, many films, or at least being referenced in them as well, because Iron Man kind of kicked it off. They were like, okay, Captain Marvel will be this, our version of Superman. Also kind of think it's a bad idea. Superman's way too OP in the DC movies. Yeah, they're not really going after that all that much. There were a bunch of snafus with Brie Larson, who played Captain Marvel, just being a really nasty person and texting really nasty things, and it went public, and people did not like it. People want to hear stories where the underdog, the good guy, attains power to fight for justice because it makes us feel good. When we see bullies oppressing people, and you see the big, strong Goliath just beating that small David, you wish that David would just have the power to strike back and put an end to the villains. And then you see it in Steve Rogers. You see him become powerful. And even though he's not nearly as strong as Thor or any of these other god-tier entities, he wields the hammer of Thor, Mjolnir, and fights back because he's willing to do whatever it takes to win. Excellent character. And Chris Evans is fairly leftist and woke, too. It's not about the person, the actor. It's about the character as it was written. You then get these woke characters that strive for nothing, are arrogant and demanding. In the Captain Marvel movie, there's a guy on a motorcycle, and he's like, hey, why don't you smile more? And then she looks at him, and then she beats and robs the guy and steals his clothes. That's not something I want to cheer for. Like, when I see a villain like Loki, and he has a redemption arc, I'm like, that's cool. He's still kind of a bad guy, though. Like, even in the end, you finally get this character arc with Loki where he redeems himself and stands by, and then you get Thor at the end of Ragnarok throwing the thing, and then Loki catches it, proving he stayed there, and he's going to be with him. You even get the great end of Loki in Infinity War when Thanos is on board the refugee ship, and Loki risks his life to try and kill Thanos. He hides the Tesseract, then he bows before him, but then draws his blade, but then Thanos stops him. Loki risked everything. Now that is a character arc. Captain Marvel's just a know-it-all who thinks she deserves it, gets blasted, gaining superpowers, and then comes back to Earth and kind of just is a dick to people, steals a guy's clothes, very villainous, and then we're supposed to cheer for her. They did the same thing with WandaVision. She tortured in WandaVision 3,000 people for like months, I guess, and then we're supposed to be happy about that and let her, at the end, they're like, they'll never know what you sacrificed for them. Nothing. She tortured them for years. They were begging for death. It's amazing how this stuff plays out. Anyway, I don't want to make this one too long, but I'll tell you this. It's not all bad news. There may be a return to this idea of merit. Meritocracy is powerful for people because we want to earn things. It feels good to work hard and earn something. We want purpose. These people don't. They just want power. That's creepy. Well, now we're seeing first, new data shows that comic readers are leaving superheroes behind, and Ava DuVernay and Tom King's new Gods film, Dead, at Warner Brothers. So we'll see how things play out. There may still be a bunch of new woke movies. Marvel MCU may be getting woke. We'll see. I'll tell you what I'm absolutely excited for and fine with. If Marvel puts out a series of movies with non-white, non-male leads, fantastic. If they want to do Monica Rambeau, a black woman with superpowers, I think that would be rad. Black Panther, great. They're doing, was it Shang-Chi or whatever? Shang-Chi? I don't know what the comic is, but it's an Asian superhero. That's great. I liked Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I'm not even a big fan of hand-me-down heroes, but Miles Morales is pretty cool. So if they do a movie where the characters are not white or not men, that's literally no issue, I think, for the most part, to literally anyone. People in our generation, my generation, huge fans of Static Shock. Young black male gains superpowers, becomes a hero, proves what it means to be a good person and fight against villains. Awesome. What matters is the story, earning that right, standing up for honor and integrity. The problem now is the people who are claiming to be the good guys are actually the bullies and the villains. When they claim that Jordan Peterson, who tells you to be responsible for yourself, to protect others and be a good person, when they're saying that's the villain, I think you know who the real bad guys are. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.